Well, here we are. It is Tuesday, and you know that every 2 weeks we are doing this really fun new show called Brush Hour. Here we are. We're going to talk about brushes with your favorite brush-obsessed weirdo. That's me. Now, as you may or may not know, I have created over 1,800 Photoshop brushes, all of which are available to you in the Photoshop brush library, which you can access from Photoshop or from Fresco and play around with these tools. And one of the great things about playing with brushes is that they can help you to find a style, a kind of a way of working that just suits you, suits the way you like to make marks, you know? It's like if somebody were just picking up a charcoal pencil for the first time and they play around with it, they go, I like the way I can shade with this, I like the way I can do some fine line art with it, I like the way I can smudge it. This just speaks to me. And someone else might pick up that charcoal pencil and say, I can't stand how messy this is not for me. Then they pick up a Micron Pigma technical pen and start drawing with it and say, ooh, this is my style, clean and sharp, and I like that. And someone else might say, no, please give me a big chunk of clay, you know, and I want to just sculpt with it because I see things in 3 dimensions. It's all about the medium, right? A lot of times that's what really speaks to somebody and creates that spark inside them that makes them want to do their kind of work, whatever that is, right? And so with brushes, we like to explore and figure that out here. Now on the show, we like to hone in on specific styles that can be done with certain brushes. We'd like to hone in on specific groups of brushes, sets of brushes. Today, we're going to talk about halftone brushes. And there are just so many fun things you can do with them. And I know you're going to come up with your own weird, crazy, cool, creative ways to use them. But today we're going to look at some of the more traditional ways to use them. So like, applications in comics, we're adding tone and so on. We're going to look at some cool, funky ways to use them you might not have thought of. We'll also take a look at them in Adobe Fresco, where you can do some really crazy stuff with them, such as you can smudge with halftone brushes, and you can use the multicolor eyedropper tool to paint and draw with them, which is just crazy. So let's start in Photoshop, all right? Let's kick it off here. I've got my canvas ready to go. And the first thing I want to show you is a sort of standard way that people understand how halftone brushes work. And why don't we just start by opening up the halftone brush set here. Remember to grab this nice big fat set of brushes. All you do in Photoshop is you come over here to this little drop down menu and you say, get more brushes. See that? It's so clear. It's saying to you, just get them. And you tap on get more brushes and it'll launch our brush library page. You just log in with your Adobe credentials, your little Adobe ID, and bam, you've got all these brush sets. And what's even better is that these brush sets are updated. So you're going to get updates, free updates, every 3 to 4 months. And sometimes even more frequently if we have a special release. Like for example, this year we had the Keith Haring brush set that was released. And those brushes are still available to you, so you can grab those. In addition to the regular updates like the summer and the fall and spring of the year updates. And that reminds me that we do have a spring 2021 brush update coming in late April, early May, thereabouts. And so there are going to be more brushes for you to play with. But today it's all about the halftones. So we've opened up the halftones here. And as you can see, there are about 90 of them, okay, if I remember correctly. It's a big selection. But we're going to start with like a sort of standard halftone brush pattern. And that would be something like the circle range. Okay, and I'm going to start with the circle range small. And what I want to show you that's so cool about the way halftones work in Photoshop and Fresco is that they respond to pen pressure. So if I'm using light pressure, I'm going to get a dot pattern like this. But look, as I start to increase the pressure, look at what happens to that dot pattern, all the way to solid black. So this gives you what was never accessible to comics artists pre-digital, right? Or even before this brush set came out. I'm proud to say this was the first brush set that was that made this possible, where you could draw with pressure to control the dot pattern, the density of the dot pattern. And so this was not possible before, but this means that you can then with tone go from a light tone to a heavier tone, okay, just by using your pressure of your pen. All right, and of course you can size the brush up and down using your right and left bracket keys. So if you want to get really tiny in there, just do a little bit of something, that's fine. And one of the ways that people like to use these brushes is, if I just jump out for a moment here, and we'll do this in a very standard traditional way that we use halftone brushes. I'm going to open up the ink box in the mega pack, and let's grab a natural inker. So we'll come on down here. Not Mr. Natural. I like Mr. Natural. All right, so let's say we've got this character here. Alrighty, now I'm gonna give him a coat. Okay, so he's wearing this coat. And I say, you know, it'd be so cool to add just a bit of tone here. I'm gonna add some tone to this coat, right? Boy, he looks really serious, doesn't he? Maybe something serious just happened. I don't know, make up your own story. Okay, here we have this guy, and I can go over to my halftone brushes. All right, so we'll close up the old mega pack here, jump back over to these halftones, and let's grab circle range tiny. Okay, I'll size my brush down a little bit. I'm just gonna come in here and just add a little tone to that coat, okay? And if I say, hey, you know what? I think that tone needs to be a little denser, right? Well, guess what? Just use more pressure, right? Increase the size of those circles, or maybe you want it to be dense up towards the top, but then just fade away to nothing towards the bottom. So go even denser here, right? I'm just using pressure to do this, really simple. And maybe that's not the pattern that you like, so you say, no, that's not what I want. Well, just go grab something else. You can grab this little guy, circle square. Okay, this is kind of a neat one. See that? Just mix it up. Try this. Maybe that's a little bit more your style. Okay, add some tone. Make it a little darker towards the top here. Alrighty. And then look at this, just erase what you don't need. Simple as that. Or, you know, I could have made a selection and drawn inside of that selection. But since we're using brushes that can be customized, check this out. Why not come over to your brush settings, and under pen pressure, just go ahead and change the minimum diameter, right? So I'll set it to like 30 or even less, maybe 20%. So now I can go from a fat stroke to a thinner stroke. I can get even less than that and do something like that. That'll give me more control, okay? And if I want these areas in here to get a little bit darker, just come back over them. Sky's the limit. You have total control over how these brushes are going to behave, okay? And like I said, there are just a ton of patterns here. So why don't we just jump here back to our list, because I want you to see the next thing that we can do with halftone brushes that people might not often think about, which is to use them for pattern work. So yes, of course, we have the standard patterns, and when I say patterns, I mean like these tones, right? Just for adding value to your black and white line art, right? These standard tones are all here in this pack. So everything you could think of that you might use in a comic, all right? Something like this, for example, really handy. And we've also got things like diagonal lines left and right, right? So you want to fill in a little area. And then look, if I use light pressure, check that out. Breaks the line up. So fun. Okay, and then I come in here and I get really nice and heavy. Look at that. So much you could do with this, even just for adding a little bit of interest in a drawing, right? As I look at this, I think, you know, gosh, with this guy, I could even just outline his silhouette, right? So I'm using my lasso tool right now. I'm just going to outline his silhouette. And once I've made that selection, a little Command-Shift-I, which will invert my selection, or Control-Shift-I if you're on a PC. And I'm going to come over here and a little layer behind him. And look, make my brush like huge. I'm going to make my brush 500 pixels and just paint it a little background like that. Ta-da. Okay, make it a little darker towards the top. Right? Look at that. Just do that. And then we just take our rectangular marquee tool and we're going to select that out and add a little stroke. let's say, yeah, 6 pixels sounds about right to me on the center. Come in here and just use my eraser and erase away this little bit right here for that panel. And folks, look at that. We've got a comic book panel, right? Just like that. Fantastic. Fantastic. So you see how quickly that can happen using those halftone brushes. By the way, I added this stroke here by accident. No big deal. Goodbye. But yeah, so there you have a comic book panel. We did that in a matter of seconds, frankly. I mean, it's really crazy. So that's kind of the standard way to use halftones, but now because you can use the pressure to control it as well, I mean, really, there's just so much you can do. I was going to move on to patterns, but I just thought of something that I want to show you first. This is really cool, is the overlapping of halftones. So what I mean is taking one pattern and passing it over another. So I'm going to size my brush back down. Let's come over here. Check this out. So, you know, I put down some lines that move from upper left to lower right. Okay, that's fine. Then I grab the ones that go from upper right to lower left and just come over here in this corner like this. And then just let that fade out. Just use light pressure as I go there. See that? Get a little darker over there. Look at that. You're adding a custom tone to that area by overlapping those. So many ways you could do that. Now, the other thing about this is I want to point out that with these halftone brushes, because you have your brush settings, you can also change the size of the pattern itself. So what you do is you go to texture. Okay, so I open up my texture options in my brush settings. If you look here at scale, okay, all I have to do is drag that one way or the other. Right now it's set to 24% of the original pattern. And by and large, with my halftone brushes, the patterns are quite large. And so this is only set at 24% of the original size of that. So I could go much larger if I want. And you can see in my preview at the bottom what that looks like. You see that? You can see how big that's getting. But I'm gonna go down to, like, say maybe like let's go to like a 7%. And then just see the difference. Look at that. So maybe you want a denser pattern. Why don't we try like 11? Maybe I want to take this right here. Okay. And then I'm going to drop it down to like a 6% and then come over here and draw over here. And just get a totally different tone. Look at that. And it even gives me those stripes because that percentage is not it's not divisible by the original percentage, okay? So that's kind of cool. Bump it up to like a 14. What happens if I do that? Oh, cool. So now you're getting into like manga territory, right? Remember, if those of you out there who are manga fans, and you see like these amazing patterns they have overlapping each other for tone and just sometimes for like action, like if you have movement, some kind of cool movement, you could be using these kinds of lines in these. You could just draw these in 2 seconds. And you've got that effect good to go, right? So I hope this is sparking your imaginations. You're starting to get all kinds of cool ideas for how to use these, right? We haven't even thought about doing this yet. Grab that first pattern we had, the circle square, put it on top, right? Put that on top of this. So many cool things you could do. Look at that. Just combine these and see what you get. Alrighty, so I'm going to shrink that down. And then it looks really weird. Put that over there. And over here, I want to talk to you about patterns. And when I say patterns, I mean things like this. So check it out. Let's go ahead and grab charcoal. I like this charcoal pencil. I like drawing with this charcoal pencil. All right, so I'm just gonna throw in some hair. There's some hair. It's just like real charcoal, right? I'm using the side of the stylus to do that, you know, because it works with pressure and tilt. Fancy. So if I want to angle it and do some shading, I can do that. So here I'm going to have this cool like fashion model person, and just going to have this crazy like brush. Sorry, I'm just talking about brushes too much. I was gonna say this this dress with these big shoulder kind of things popping out, and it's just flowing down, doing its thing. It's like a capey sort of thing. I don't know what. You get the idea, right? So there she is. All right, now I want to add a cool pattern to that. So just go ahead and grab my halftone brushes here. So let's pop in here. And you'll notice a lot of these have patterns to them that are not your typical patterns for comics and whatnot, are they? All right, so check this one out, wiggle sticks. All right, so come in here, little wiggle sticks action. That could be interesting. Or maybe I want to do something a little more fancy schmancy, like how about these? These are the linked. That's a linked pattern. Or lattice. Let's try lattice. We got a big one of those. Let's try the big lattice. I like that. That's a cool pattern, right? Nice. Let's jump behind this layer and let's grab a color and let's just make a selection of that silhouette using my lasso tool here. And let's see what happens. I just throw that in there. See, that's kind of interesting. Grab another color. See this? Now I'm painting with some blue, but it retains the pattern. And if I use really light pressure, okay, with that new color over the original color, look what happens. See that? The orange comes through because I'm not filling as much of that dot pattern with color as I was when I first grabbed the new color. So here I can go even with another color up here to this weird, cool gradation. See that? That's interesting. And guess what? With the updates that we've had in the past 3 years to the brush sets, I've added a bunch of halftone patterns for all of you guys to play with. So we have, you know, in the original set, things like this nice cubed pattern. I like this one. Look at that. You can just draw cubes all over the place, but you can also do this nice pattern like this. This is sort of a mid-century modern thing for me. When I see this, it makes me think of like wallpapers and stuff I might see in a fancy hotel in 1960, like in Tokyo or something, you know? That's just what I think of when I see that pattern. Alrighty, so why don't we grab all these and we'll hide them for a minute. And I want to say hi to some folks in the chat, see if we have any questions before I move on. Then I want to show you something cool you can do with adding texture to your drawing. So who do we have here today? Let's see. Workarounds make the world go round, says Robzilla, the one and only. You're so right. Hello, we have The Moon's Pencil, Andreas, Tim, and Afroha, and RB, and Steve, and General Kenobi, and Golden Rose, David GFX. What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well. Sean's here. Hey, Sean, and Laura. Hello. I'm Christelle. Looking to see if we have any questions. Diana, first time. Hey, thanks for joining us. Remember, folks, these are all these shows are all archived on YouTube. You can watch them back if you miss them the first time around. But it's better if you're here live so I can talk to you. Bonjour Franck, ça va? J'espère que tout va bien avec toi, tout ça. Thank you very much for being here. Passing by, improving your English. Very funny, my friend. You speak great English, of course, much better than my French. Bien sûr. Okay. Who else is here? Lots of nice folks. Okay, gang. Do we have any questions? If not, I'm just gonna move on. I'm gonna bust through. Yeah, Rob. I wish there were vector halftone brushes too. Let's make that happen. Okay, put some pressure on the team and let's make that happen. Talking about capture. Yes, you can make patterns in capture and you can turn them into halftone brushes, which is amazing. You can do that in Photoshop. Just take any old halftone brush that I've already made and replace the texture file with the one that you just saved in capture, and bam, you have a whole new halftone brush. Would you use black halftone for a coloring page? Yeah, sure. Why not? It'd be fine. Any care for the messy dissolve that happens just before the halftones get near black? Oh, no. So the reason they are set to dissolve is so that there are no gray pixels. We do not want any gray pixels. And since we're dealing with pixel-based art, this is pixel-based art, we're not doing vector art, you've got to find a solution to not have those grays. And so the solution is to work in dissolve. My recommendation for that is just work at a very high resolution so that, if you work at like a 450, 600 DPI on your drawing, what you can do is you can then size it down to 300 DPI. That'll smooth out some of that dissolve if you're worried about that, and it should look fine. Alrighty. Not seeing any other questions. Carlos is asking where you can get the brushes. Hey, if you watch back at the beginning of the show, right here, you go to your brushes panel, go to get more brushes, okay? Log in with your Adobe ID, then you get a ton of brush options, including the halftone brushes. Alrighty. Very important point before I move on to textures, and that is that a lot of people were fans of the Screentone brushes that used to be part of the halftone brush set. And many people still own those, and that's fine. But if you're looking for the Screentone brushes, you want to work with Screentones, I've got a tip for you. Here it is. What you do is, it's very simple. Let's say you like the 45 tiny. Okay, you like this brush. You say, yeah, I really like that pattern. Okay, that's the one I want. But I wanted it I don't want it to respond to pressure at all. I don't want any of that. I just want a solid tone. Okay, I want a screen tone. Well, here's what you do. Just open up your brush settings. Okay, change the mode for texture. Okay, to subtract. Turn off texture each tip, and then play with the depth until you get what you want, the depth and the brightness. So I can do this, just crank that brightness up. There, now I've got a solid tone. Ta-da! So you change the mode to subtract, turn off the texture each tip, crank that depth up to 100, and then play around with the brightness and contrast until you get the size and the pattern that you want. Okay, and once you've done that, by the way, of course, then you can just play with the scale as well, much as you like, to get it to do whatever you want. So I can go super tiny, whatever you want. But then you're just painting with a solid screen tone, right? Look at that. No pressure response happening there. I'm just painting with it, and that's what you get. Okay. Now, of course, that works with any of these patterns. So not just with that one. Whatever I see. So maybe like the clams. I like this one. This is kind of a funny one. Look at that. Woo. I should have used that on that woman's dress, right? It's kind of a cool pattern. All right, so maybe though I just want to fill something with this pattern and I don't want to bother with all that pressure responsiveness. By the way, as I'm painting with this, I'm thinking of like a Chinese, you look at those Chinese prints, where they have fish that they'll have a fish. This would be so great for the scales, wouldn't it? Just as I'm thinking of it, I'm just like, gosh, I got to try that out. Just got to try that out. Something like that. And I just fill that shape with that pattern. Get rid of that little area there for the eye. Ta-da! Anyway, what do? Go to brush settings, go to texture, change it to subtract, delete that texture each tip action there, crank it up to 100, play around with the brightness and contrast until you get what you want. And so I'll probably bring that brightness down, bring that contrast up. Get it to a point where you're happy with whatever that is, and then you just do a solid pattern. Okay, so easy peasy. You like the brush, you want to save it as a Screentone brush, what do? Come down here to this little, looks like a little new page icon, or same as what we use for new layer. That just means make a new brush. So you would make a new brush, call it whatever you want, and say Screentone, fish scale, whatever. Save that, good to go, okay? Okie dokie. So now, check this out. I'm going to use the brains brush because I like this one for what I'm about to show you next, okay? So we're going to have a little scene here. Got some grass. And behind that, got some hills, okay? Go a little cooler, a little lighter here in the distance, right? Maybe even more so. Beep. All right, here in the foreground, I'm going to grab this color, go a little darker, a little greener, a little darker. And I'm just going to make myself a nice little shape here for like a little cypress tree, right? Just stick that right there. Put another one, whoops, put another one right next to it. There we go. So a pair of nice little trees there, okay? Fill those in, Option Delete, fill with foreground color, or Alt Delete on a PC. I'm filling those with my foreground color. Now while I've got them selected, okay, I've got the Brains brush here, the Halftone Brains brush, and I'm gonna go for a darker color. See that? Darker green. And then I'm just gonna do this. Just paint over here. Go a little lighter towards the top, a little darker towards the bottom. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And look at that. Isn't that great? This is one of the best ways to use halftones, is to add a cool textural element to illustrations, especially those that are more shape-based like this. And it's just the easiest thing to do. You can control the pressure, you can control the density of that pattern. So it's just so simple, right? I want to make that really dark at the bottom. Just keep layering over it like that. And there we have a pair of trees chilling out. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead then, and behind this, why don't we throw in a little sky color, okay? We're gonna take our original hill. Actually, I'm gonna take this sky and I'm just gonna lighten it up a hair. There we go. Gotta have our contrast, right? Down here at the bottom of the hill, or you know what, this is gonna be fun. Check this out, watch this. We're gonna come up behind these bad boys here, and we're just gonna make a little mountain shape like that. Grab some white, and I'm gonna grab another halftone brush. Let's try something like, too many choices, gang. That's always the problem, isn't it? I like the pattern ones, like the lattice. That's kind of fun. I just want to see what happens if I use that. Oh yeah, that's kind of nice. But let's try something else. Maybe links is a good one. All right, let's use the links. I'll make my brush really big, and they're just gonna do this. Just come in here and then really lightly carry that down to the bottom. Fade that out. Go a little smaller now. A little denser towards the top, a little denser, denser, denser. As I get up towards the top of the mountain, it's gonna get as dense as I can, right? Up here. There we go. And then I'm gonna grab another one and just go over the top of that. So here we are combining patterns, right? Just combining patterns. Add a bit of texture there. Like so. That's kind of nice. That's something you could do right there. But what I was going to do was, let me hide this for a second. I was going to add texture to the grasses. So check this out. This is a very handy thing. So I just got to grab that brush. Let's see where I put it. It's an interesting one. I got to find it first. Diagonal lines could work, but there's one in particular that I'm thinking of that's got a really neat look to it. It's not ripple. Here it is. Wicker. I like this very much. All right, so grab this color, go a little cooler and a little darker. And I'm gonna lock my layer transparency for this foreground, okay? Right over here, lock, tap on that, kablam. Make my brush nice and big, and look at this nice pattern. Just a little bit here and there. See that? Just a little texture. Brings that to life, brings it to life. And let's go ahead and add, if I can find it. Here we go, big glop. I love big glop. This is one I really like. See this? It's adding these little diagonal details here. And I go a little darker towards the foreground here. A more dense, right? And that gives us this cool directional movement. Like little grasses blowing in the wind. Like that. So shape-based art, you make shapes, you make selections, okay? You go ahead and grab some halftones, and look what you can do. Look at that, so much more interesting than just that flat color, isn't it? And I could go and leave it a little darker here and there, see this? And just add a few little bits and pieces here and there, just like that. Hope you all can see that, okay? Lovely, lovely, lovely. That is so much fun. And then all it remains, of course, is to just do some kind of nice cloud pattern in there, whatever. And for that, you could use any old halftone you like, whatever you like, right? There's just a billion of them, so pick something you like. Maybe I could use that clam pattern facing up, the upwards direction. Whoops, I got the wrong color there. Here we go, go to white, and just kind of throw that in there. You come up with your own ideas. I just want to show you this ability to add texture to something and paint with these patterns. Pretty fun. All right, let's see, any questions? If you know the name of a brush, you can just search for it. Yes, you can, Steve. In the latest version of Photoshop, there is a search bar in the brushes panel. I'm not working on the latest version right now. I've got this one slightly further back. But yes, there is a search bar. Not to worry. Not to worry. What else? Anyone else? If you're overwhelmed, don't download the Mega Pack. No, that's bad advice. Sorry, Tim. Do download the Mega Pack, because the Mega Pack is a great place to start if you want to experiment with natural media. So it covers inks and a lot of paints and even some oils that mix, and dry media like pencils and charcoal and chalk and pastels, and as well as effects brushes with spatter and cool stuff in them. I know it's a lot of brushes, but definitely a great place to start. But I hear you, Tim. It is a lot. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. But they're organized. Yes, Bruce, I sing. Ha 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 ha. Not very well. With a friend. Everybody needs a friend. Yes. Happy little trees. All right, so I'm not seeing any specific questions about what I just did, so that's great. Another thing I want to show you that most people just don't think about with the old halftones, and that is the ability to draw with the halftones. And what I mean is to really do inking. Check this out. So what you do is you go and you find yourself a halftone brush that's kind of a little bit more dense than the average. Now that Brains brush I was using a minute ago is a good one. So I go to the regular old Brains brush here, and I'm going to take my texture and scale it down from 68% to, like, let's say about 36 or somewhere thereabouts, okay? So here's what we're looking at. See that? All right, maybe I'll bump that up to about 45. See how that looks. Yeah, that's good. Okay, excuse me. Come back with my shape dynamics, crank that minimum diameter down to like 1%. And then size my brush down. See, I'm sizing it down using my right and left bracket keys. So left bracket. Okay, and now, see this? I can draw with that brush. I'm even going to turn on roundness jitter, set it to pen pressure. So that means with light pressure, I'm going to get an even thinner line. Okay, very handy. And let's go over to our texture, and I'm going to bump the depth up by just up to 9% instead of 8. And so that's going to give me a slightly denser line. So I went to texture, depth, bumped it up to 9 from 8. Now, look what you've got. You've got a really cool inking brush that's got some texture to it, right? Very, very interesting. And so with this, I can draw. And I can use lighter pressure to retain some of that texture right there in the hair, right? Cool, cool, cool. Size it down a hair. I'm just using light pressure to add some tone here and there. See that? Just adding a little tone. So I'm using a halftone brush to draw. Not thinking about just using it for tone, thinking about using it as an inking tool more or less, right? That's kind of what's going on here. Pretty fun. And this could just be a style that you use for some kind of illustration assignments, you know, whatever. You're like, hey, you know what? For this assignment, I want to go with this line art that's sort of got this characteristic to it where it's a little broken up, right? And so, voila, here's how you do it. Just grab yourself one of those halftone brushes and do what I just did, which is to size it down a little bit, make a few adjustments to how the texture is working, and then apply those shape dynamics so it'll respond to pen pressure for the diameter of the brush as you're drawing with it, right? And then you've got yourself a nice custom inker. So this is something I've not seen, I don't think anyone doing. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm sure, you know, because I can't see everybody out there. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, using Photoshop every day to draw with custom brushes, so I don't know if people have discovered this yet. But I really wanted to point this out because I just think, you know, all kinds of cool stuff can come out of this. If you do some experimenting, you can hit on a really interesting line art style. And people say, how'd you do that? I say, sorry, I don't know, it just happened by accident. Or you could say, you gotta watch Brush Hour because Kyle will tell you how to do this stuff. Okay, so zoom in on that. You can see all that nice textural goodness. Isn't that fun? Fun, fun, fun. So yeah, that is drawing with the halftones. That's another cool thing that you can do. And I'm going to now switch over to the iPad. All right, because I want to show you some nifty things that we can do there. So hang on a minute while I bear with me. I'm just going to switch over. All right, put my little Wacom stylus away. And let's bring that iPad over here. Okay, so now here we have Adobe Fresco open and ready to go. And I'm going to open up the comics panel here for our brushes. And here you're going to see, of course, we have a bunch of lovely, whoops, let me just slide this over 1 second. Bear with me here. Da, 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 da. One of the challenges of working with QuickTime is to try and size that window so that everything is visible. Alrighty. So we come over here to our comics panel for our brushes, and you see we have some nice halftones in here. Okay. And yes, these work just like halftones work in Photoshop. And there are several of these that are a little different from what you're going to get in the standard halftone brush set in Photoshop. But I love how I can just very carefully build up towards a nice, rich, dark tone here. Like that, right in the corner. Okay, now, why pop over here to Fresco to show you these brushes? Well, because in Fresco, of course, we have the multicolor eyedropper tool. So I'm going to grab a paintbrush here, a block stain, and let's go ahead and put some color down. Orange right there, blue right here, yellow right there, and let's go for a little greenish kind of a color right there. Just let that peek in. Go back to that original red. Make sure that's visible. There we go. Alrighty, now, if I use my multicolor eyedropper, remember the way to use the multicolor eyedropper is to hold down the touch modifier, okay, which is this little circle, which I'm now dragging around the screen. I hold that down, and then with my other finger, I just start moving around the screen, okay? And see this? I'm going to grab a little yellow, a little red, a little orange, and up in the top right, it tells me multiple colors. It's saying, hey, you're selecting multiple colors at once. And now, I have just selected multiple colors, so I start painting with that brush, and look at that. Crazy. What an amazing thing. So, not only is this exceedingly useful for painting, and of course, you know, like lettering art. I mean, come on, how cool is that? Hello, right? But why not grab a halftone brush and mess with that? So I'm going to first jump back out and just use black, because not to worry, that cool selection of colors I made is saved at the bottom of my color panel. If you notice and look down there at the bottom of the color panel, that swatch that's next to the white swatch with the plus sign is that multicolor swatch that I had just selected a moment ago. Okay, it's right there waiting for me. So I go back to black and just grab a little inking brush here. And I'm going to just make this person wearing an enormous puffy winter coat, because I don't know about where you all are, but we had an extremely cold week not too long ago. All right, so there's that big coat. Now I'm going to come under there, and I'm going to grab that halftone brush. Let's go to FX, pardon me, Comics. And let's grab the Halftone 2 brush. Let's see what that one looks like. That's kind of nice. Yeah, I like that. And check it out. I go to my multicolor swatch. Whoa. That's crazy. Look at that. That's awesome. See that? Crazy. I can just do it again and again and again and just keep playing around. And you're gonna get all these crazy patterns in there. All right, now of course you could grab another halftone brush if you want to try that. So let's just undo. Let's try this one. Oh, I like that too. Isn't that crazy? You're painting with a rainbow of dots. That's really fun. I mean, that could be like a little spot illustration. Right there, a little spot illustration in a magazine. And you know, you go collect your 250 bucks for your 5 minutes of playing around in Fresco and just having fun. Life's not fair, but for those of us who are going to learn how to draw with special brushes, we don't have to tell anybody, right? We don't have to tell anybody it was that easy. Shh. Don't tell the client. Ruin it for all of us. All right, so check that out. What do you think? What do you think? Fruity Pebbles, says Rob. Ha ha, that's funny. Ah, yes, yes, yes. Kyle, do you know when Adobe will add the text tool to Windows version of Fresco? Yes, Robert, that is on the way extremely soon. Everything we release in the iPad version, Windows is usually same date or not too far behind. So that'll be definitely one of the next releases to come. And please understand that, you know, to develop for these different platforms, unfortunately, we can't just move code. I wish we could, you know, from one platform to another, but that's unfortunately not how it works. All right, so any questions about using the multicolor eyedropper here? I think this is pretty fun. So the last thing I wanted to show you with using the halftones in Fresco, I mean, this is cool. We could play with this for ages, you know. And of course, if I use some imported halftones, which I believe I imported some of the updates. Let's see, we have a spring 2019. That one, was that the one with all the with the halftones? Let me check that one out. One of the recent updates had a ton of halftones in it. Maybe it was the winter 20. Yeah, here we go, winter 2021. So this has some really nifty ones. Check out Budapest. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? That's a halftone pattern. So, you know, you could go as dense as you want with that. But really, the painterly effects you get with this are kind of weird and crazy. So lots of interesting ideas there. Different sizes for that one. And we've got the Hexa Star, which is also quite nice. There's the Hexa Star. Alrighty, so let's hide all this for just a moment. And I wanted to show you that you can smudge with the halftones, which is crazy. So why don't we go back to paintbrush. Let's use, oh, I know what I want. I know what I want. I want to use that chunky brush. There you are. All right, chunky. Let's put some paint down. All right, so here's my little swatch of paint. Using that nice chunky brush. Now, of course, I could go to my smudge tool and I could go to the painting category, grab the same brush. So grab chunky. There it is. And I could smudge with that. Makes sense, right? But maybe I want a little crazy. Maybe I want to get a little weird. How about I go to smudge tool and open up comics and just grab this halftone 4 big. Look at this. Like, what is going on? You are smudging with a halftone brush, and so what you're able to do is pull color from the painted swatch, right? You're pulling from this area that's painted, and you're pulling with the halftone pattern. So on the right side where this pink is, on the right edge of this, I'm just gonna touch my brush in there and start pulling to the right. And look at that. Isn't that crazy? So I'm smudging with halftones. And then if I move back in the other direction, it's like I'm removing pigment. It's crazy. Back and forth. And then look, see these little dots I create inside? That's because I'm just reducing the pressure. So I go from one level of smudging where I'm pulling a little white in there, but then I'm filling it back in with a little red, but with less pressure, and back and forth. You just can't do this anywhere else. This is a crazy phenomenon. Look at this. See that? Totally weird. So why don't we go to our smudge tool again, and we're going to zoom on down to that winter 2021 update where we have all these halftone patterns. Okay, and let's use the cardigan, for example. So I'll grab that cardigan, the large one. Just come over here. Just go like this. Whoa. Look at that. Imagine what you could do with this, creating really cool backgrounds or patterns for your illustrations. Nobody would be able to figure out how you did this. It would be such a cool look, right? Imagine if this is just a pattern on the wall in the background of some illustration. It's got all this nice blending going on from one color and texture to another. It doesn't make sense. It's like, how did that happen, right? And then of course the very obvious, which is to use it for clothing or something along those lines. Right? I just love this idea of taking this and having it be some crazy long garment of some kind. And I'll go ahead and select the invert, erase that, deselect, and we'll just draw. Right? Isn't that crazy? So there's your little fashion statement for the day. Cool, huh? Stuff you could do with this. So, you know, use your imaginations. You all are very clever and imaginative. Don't forget, when you use a multicolor swatch and you want to change the color, don't worry, you can. You go to your HSB sliders and then just play around there. Bam. Now I've got another crazy pattern to paint with. Look at this. Alrighty. So, okay, folks. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with me for another episode of Brush Hour. Hope you enjoyed it. I sure did, and I love talking about brushes, and I'm glad that you like to watch me talk about brushes. We're going to do it again in a couple weeks, so stay tuned. Everybody take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and enjoy the rest of your week. And remember, please, to be kind, and I'll say ciao for now.